Hello and welcome to Good Show, the podcast helping you answer one of the most daunting questions in television. What am I watching next? I'm Anthony Mako.
And I'm Brandon Sharp.
On this episode of Good Show, we are talking about The White Lotus. The White Lotus was a pandemic creation of Mike White. If you're like me and had to look up who in the world is Mike White, he most quickly came to my mind as the teacher in Orange County. But he's obviously more famous because he was the writer of School of Rock. The White Lotus isn't his first HBO series either. He was the writer-creator of a show called Enlightened, which I've never seen. Anyway, The White Lotus is basically just a week in the life of wealthy vacationers in idyllic locations, juxtaposed against the life of the locals who endure the presence of said vacationers. There are currently 2 seasons, but the show's original intention was actually just to be a limited series. Season 1 takes place in Hawaii. Season 2 takes place in Sicily, both at fictional White Lotus resorts. And it's worth noting that the cast is almost entirely different in each season. Now, full disclosure, neither Brandon nor I enjoyed this show very much, but it was/is a smash hit, which really makes it perfect for our show's subtitle. I'm sure you've heard about it, but is The White Lotus something you want to be watching next? Brandon, let's dive in.
Let's go.
Let's not give an easier answer right off the bat because we might be a little emotional with our answer, Brandon. Neither of us love this, but we want to be fair about the show, and there are things we liked about it. So I think if we run it through our process, we can have a really good episode and talk about it, but then sort of decide, like, I don't think in the end of the show we're going to say watch it or don't watch it, but I think we can say, like, you may want to watch it if you like this sort of thing, and if you don't like this sort of thing. There's certain points, and I think there's a couple really strong points in the series where you could just be like, yeah, I don't like this at all, so I'm done. And you can just feel good about being done. It's just going to go on from there.
Yeah, I think my thing is, I'm not sure I would recommend this to anyone, but I want to approach this episode as if I do like the show.
Yeah.
Because the only way this is ever going to work is if we're going to take something out, we take it out intelligently. We need to do our due diligence here. So I'm really interested to get in here and unpack some of this stuff because I feel like it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, me too. I do too. Yeah.
And even though it was a little bit of a, drag getting through some of this, I'd love to really put my finger on why.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing we'll be able to figure out tonight.
So where did you first hear about the show? I think you did way before me.
Yeah. So I was in right away on season 1 when it was still airing.
Cool. Yeah. Interesting.
And yeah, I think it was HBO advertisement, similar to Succession.
Yeah. It
looked really sleek. The marketing was great for it. And, I don't know.
So you were sort of pre-hype then, kind of, right?
I think I was hype, like mid hype. I think I had heard a little bit of it. You see articles and stuff. And if I remember correctly, I got in as it was really becoming popular.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm kind of in at this point. I just watched the whole thing in the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And so, like, fully, I mean, I'd obviously heard about it in the beginning, but then people just kept saying, you guys got to watch the White Lotus. Guys got to watch the White Lotus. I think genuinely for a lot of people, it was a curiosity of what we think of it, not specifically like we love this show. I found it very funny that people that usually recommended it to me always like couched it with some sort of statement about how it's very either cringy or, stuff like that. And it was always like, you got to watch it as sort of like a dumpster fire. And I never like that sales pitch. I never like that sales pitch, but, and it's sort of a true sales pitch.
That's like a trash watch. And I don't usually do those.
But that's not to say this is like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something like that.
Or The Door.
Insult your favorite show.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're not watching it because it's the worst thing you've ever seen. It's so bad. It's funny. That's not what's happening here.
Right.
So a lot of people really like this. And it has won some awards.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So this is it's not winning Razzies or anything. It's winning Golden Globes. So
sure, for sure. So are we doing this because of the hype? Is that why we're doing this episode?
Oh, certainly. And I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Totally fine.
Anything wrong with that. I think it'd be like the same thing. just ignoring something super important and acting like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think you're, like I said in the last episode, you're becoming irrelevant at that point. You know, we need to be tangling with these things, whether it's our cup of tea or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about this episode because I think this is probably like, in a lot of areas, a quality show.
Yeah.
Production wise and stuff like that. But I'm excited that we have one that is just not one of our favorite shows that we're talking about. Like, because that at this point we're kind of getting into some stuff that we may not have loved as much. Okay, so we spent enough time on question one. What kind of show is this? And let me just warn you, it's listed on the internet as a black comedy. So you know how we do those.
It's a ton like, it feels a ton like Succession.
Totally, yeah. Satirical.
Yep. Absolutely black comedy.
Yep.
So we said before, black comedies are darker than dark comedies, right? Like
I suppose. I mean, we're making that up, but yes, we have said that, yes.
Okay, because we had this exact conversation with Succession, correct?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So I'm in with that. I think there are some slight things, like some very slight things that I found funny.
Yeah.
That were like, yeah, they would hit on kind of that Succession wave of humor. But I think the main thing I would put my shoulder into is the satirical side of this.
Yeah.
It really feels like an exaggeration of.
It is, but it's not. I don't think it's obvious about the satire. The only thing I mean by that at this point is basically like they're not telling jokes that you should be getting. They're taking themselves completely seriously. I think that's important to know.
Who is the cast or the
cast,
the characters in the show?
The show is not so much the writer of the show.
I think the through line here is I'm not convinced that people actually act like this. I'm sure there are. Some.
We're going to talk extensively about that later.
Okay,
but and I guess what I mean is this isn't Stephen Colbert, who is a satire, or the Colbert Report.
The Colbert Report, yes.
That was a satire, but that's not what this is. This is they think it's serious, and Colbert didn't necessarily think it is. So how about like in our 5-point system?
It's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous.
It's what takes something from a 4, a premium drama, to a 5, something more cinematic. It needs to have an X factor, and it could be CGI that's like movie quality CGI.
Yes,
it could be a few things. I think one thing that could kind of kick it over into the next level is like a really, really beautiful set piece, or like really beautiful on location shooting. That's something this has.
Yeah, something I noticed, I think that was one of my favorite parts about the show. It's not, you could maybe help me with some language here, but there's a specific color to it that is not equal.
It's almost sepia.
Yes, it's almost sepia, but it's also not equal to where you are. So like Hawaii is probably the best example, but you're at a resort, but they make Hawaii's obviously beautiful.
Yeah.
But the whole show is just a touch sepia.
Yeah. So sepia is not the right. I'm almost embarrassed. It's like a very golden, warm tone. Everything is toned very warm.
Yes.
In both seasons. One's in Sicily, one's in Maui.
Yeah.
I think both of them are toned very warmly.
Yeah, so that's in regards to this point system sort of thing. It's certainly cinematic. There's a cinematography choice made, but also I think that was probably intentional to sort of say like, we know or we imagine what Hawaii should probably look like, and this is sort of like Hawaii in a weird mood. And so it's got its own color, and so once you're being that artistic with the show, I think you get some credit for being cinematic about it. And that's one of my favorite parts. Like they certainly do well with that. So,
sorry,
go ahead. No,
not to linger here, but there's something, the tone of the coloring paired with like the ethereal music. It almost gives it like we're in the Twilight Zone feel for me.
Yes.
There's something eerie about it. Like
for sure.
Something eerie.
For sure.
Almost like we've stepped out of our bodies. And I don't know. It's just got something funky happening there.
No doubt. Can I pause right there and say, do you like the music? Because don't want to bury the lead. I hate it.
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm not trying to like be offensive or make fun of a culture, but it's, like when you play,
right.
We're going to say it anyway,
Here we go.
Run around when you were kids and you played cowboys and Indians and you went, oh, like that noise is, it's almost like they put it on a MIDI and like, but they played that with the keys, and it's all like this. I don't know, that noise type. Does that? Totally. Are you getting any of that?
Yeah, I think that's probably. I kind of took that as the intention of the show. It was especially in.
Do we need to cut that
some
out?
Of it's
was that?
No, it's fine. I think I don't know. I'm not the judge of what's fine, but I think that's sort of the intention of the show, to make comments about sort of like not native as in native people, but like local natives. There's a commentary on that which we can get into later. But
you think the music?
I think that's probably part of it. Yeah.
Okay, because they use that in the Sicily season also.
I know, but yeah,
it was almost like at that point we can't get away from this. We got to use it.
Yeah, and I'm starting to feel bad because I will say, so what I don't like the theme song. But what I mostly don't like, I mean, whatever, a theme song's a theme song. What I mostly don't like is how often that theme song pops up. And I just would have preferred, like, just something weird starts happening in the show and it starts fading into the theme song, which just kind of drove me nuts, because it's not a big enough theme songs to kind of move in and out of. It's just that one. It's just like an earworm that gets in there and just bores its way into your head. It drives me insane. I will say, though, in season 1...
Yeah, this wasn't John Williams, and we're able to use his themes then and seam them in.
Right.
Fill them in seamlessly throughout the show. This is funky stuff.
But in season 1, I did like some of the sort of soundtracky music that went underneath, which was, if you didn't notice, those are all like hymn tunes. Sung by, I think, just like probably a Hawaiian choirs. Now, when I say hymn tunes, well, here comes nerdy Anthony, whatever. But hymn tunes are usually borrowed from something else. So I'm not saying Christian hymn tunes, because a lot of like Christian hymns are put over top of something like a hymn tune that's used in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
It might be a classical music piece or something like that. Or like the Ohio State alma mater is over a very familiar hymn. They use the same hymn tune, and neither of them really owns it. But anyway, a lot of the music that was going on in season 1 is familiar hymn tunes sung by this Hawaiian choir, which was a pretty interesting juxtaposition. Now I'm getting very nervous that we're like heading down the road toward, we love this show. But anyway.
By the way, that's the quality of analysis you get here at Good Show.
That's right.
The kind of stuff you can't find anywhere else. I mean,
that's right.
Anthony and his hymn tunes is priceless. But I think it's important to note that there is good things about this show. And
sure.
We're going to talk about the good things also.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think this would be a terrible episode if we just crapped on it. So I am welcome. Like, I would welcome some positives here at the beginning, especially,
Yeah. Well, speaking of positive, let's go to another thing that I think is positive, which not completely positive, but there are a lot of positives. And let's talk about characters, because I think there are a lot of really good characters in the show. Who stood out to you?
Well, so I'm fresh off season 2.
Yeah.
Right off the top, Michael Imperioli, and he plays Christopher Moltisanti in The Sopranos.
Yeah, he was excellent.
He was really, really good.
And also, like, you hadn't seen him in very much stuff besides Sopranos.
Like, literally, I haven't seen him since The Sopranos.
Right, so he did so well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he almost had like a little bit of an Italian mobster feel to him. I think it worked. I think it worked really well.
It did work, yeah.
Especially his character is of Sicilian descent in the show. So I thought he was fantastic. Season 1, I fired that up today, and I'm glad I did, because it brought back a lot of the things that had me watching it in the beginning. Connie Britton is in this show.
Yeah.
She's good.
She's good. And also, I thought Steve Zahn was good, and I wouldn't normally give him credit as good, or like in other things, but he was good in this show, I thought.
Their daughter and her friend in the show, Sydney Sweeney and Brittany O'Grady, play their roles really, really well.
Yep.
You're annoyed with them. We've talked about this before. They're teenage girls. You're supposed to be they're probably in their 20s. But
I think they're in college.
That's neither here nor there. They do that thing very well.
Yep.
There was...
I just thought most people played their characters well.
Yeah. And that might be that might be what keeps you coming back to the show. Jake Lacey from season 1 is
perfectly horrible.
Perfectly horrible.
Yeah.
And he was in like the later seasons of The Office. He was in a couple things that I've seen before, but he really nailed that entitled white dude.
Yeah.
Stereotype.
And here's what I think he did so well, that what you really need when you have that character is you have to sort of understand why they would be the way. You can't just fully hate them. You have to understand why they would be the way that they are. So like it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I act this way? Like it makes total sense that I would act this way. Yeah. And he played that. He walked that tightrope all the way through that whole season so well. He just played, and the whole time you're just kind of like when he's okay. So this isn't really a spoiler, but whenever he keeps coming back to fight about the room, you know.
So that's the thing.
Yeah, but also he keeps coming back to fight about the room, and you're a little bit like, oh, quit being a jerk, and you're also a little bit like, well, he did pay for the room. Like,
okay, so I think there is a point in which he was justified, and then I think that shifts over to, good heavens, you let it go.
Right, but if he was justified in the first place, why let it go?
He brought it up. He asked about it. They gave him an explanation, whether or not the guy was lying to him or not.
Right.
Move on now.
Yeah, I guess.
You got your answer.
Sure.
So here was my kind of my thought process. How much of this is your newly married wife in on? Like how much is she okay with?
Yeah.
She was okay for like the initial conversation.
Yeah.
And then he got carried away. She's like, let it go. We're on a honeymoon. Let's just get back to that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I
just watched that, so I have a very strong opinion on it.
The point at this point is he did a really good job.
Oh yeah. The big one though, I feel like the one we really should mention is Jennifer Coolidge plays Tanya in both seasons. She is mainly the only character that is a carryover character from both. She's like a main in both seasons. And she just won a Golden Globe.
Yeah.
For her performance in this.
Yeah. I do not think she should have.
Okay. Yeah.
I know that's kind of where you were leading me, because I had already told you.
I was leading you up to the river.
Well, I'm hosting this show.
You to drink.
Yeah. So I do not. She bothers me. She bothered me in this, I guess. And in a different way than sort of everyone else bothered me. I just think she kind of has one tone in. I haven't seen her in that much, but in the stuff I've seen her do, she has one tone, and she was that in this again. And it's also, there's not really a reason for her to be like uber annoying, but she was uber annoying. So like, it doesn't fit her character necessarily. And I just don't see what did she do that was so special that deserved the Golden Globe? Like, it felt like I don't agree with the award win. And it was almost like, well, people like the White Lotus, so we had to find something to give an award for. And the person who's in both seasons, that's where we're going to award it. But there's no reason for me to just sit here and punch down. So like, I don't think she was that great.
I feel a little gaslit, I must say.
Okay. Say more about that.
It's like don't believe your eyes type situation. Like they're trying to convince us that Jennifer Coolidge was good.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, I'm not buying it.
Right.
She has played the same character in everything I've ever seen her in.
Yeah.
She is the same. She plays herself. You're not going to convince me that she deserved a Golden Globe. Now, set aside the fact
I don't know who she was up against. But.
Set aside the fact that I don't think award shows are very virtuous anymore. But you're just not going to convince me that that she deserved an award for that performance. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. No, I agree.
There are other people who you could have maybe flagged for that.
Yep.
But not her.
Totally.
Not her.
Nope.
All right.
We'll
leave that there.
Yeah, that's probably enough. But yeah. Okay, how about story? Yeah. I think the big question on this is how slow is too slow?
It's too slow.
And is this that? Yeah. This is right. This is
too slow.
There were times where I was just sitting there going, "Can we go somewhere, please? Can we move on, please?"
No, I want to speak to season 2.
Okay.
Because that's the one I'm freshest on.
Sure.
There were parts in maybe like the last 2 episodes that I felt like moved pretty well.
I'll hop on that and say I literally thought the last 2 episodes were my favorite episodes of the entire series. Yeah. For that reason. Go.
There was like a good amount of suspense. I felt myself like engaged.
Yep.
And I was like, ooh, what? Oh my, this is getting serious.
Yep.
I think there's something there. I think they did in some sense land the plane well.
Yep.
I don't know. That might even be too strong. They did do things well in the ending of the season. The problem is everything leading up to it. That's the big problem.
Yeah, like 14 episodes. Yeah. Besides the last 2. I'm just saying like the 14 before I don't remember how many there were exactly, but yeah, something like that.
I think it's 7 total.
Yeah.
So literally 5 episodes of almost nothing.
Mm-hmm. Especially in season 2. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because season 1 was also slow, I thought, but then season 2 was just like horrible. Horribly slow.
Season 1 has a quality about it that always keeps you slightly off balance. And you're like, there's something just off here. And it's kind of compelling. It kind of makes you feel like anything could happen at any moment. And so I think that is engaging to some degree in season 1. Season 2 does not have that.
Yeah.
You kind of know how this thing works now. You know nothing's going to happen.
Well, it's probably because the shock value stuff wasn't going to work again. So
maybe, yeah.
Because there's so much shock value stuff in season 1. We're not going to be able to get you. So where they were shock value in season 1, they went uber dark. They just went kind of like creepy dark in season 2. And that's how they tried to do it, but didn't do it very well. And then there was some mystery in season 2 that was basically just mystery because nobody was talking about what the mystery was. So I'm basically saying like blank space mystery that just the clock is ticking while you watch the episode and you're just like, can we talk about something else? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Brendan, let's try and be scientific about this. Neither of us liked the show that much. What else? Like, can you put your finger? We've said some stuff, but what exactly do you like about the show? And I'm speaking generically. Like, is there something generically I like this about that show?
Season 2, there wasn't really anything like broad stroke wise that I liked. I don't feel like if we hadn't been doing an episode, I don't know that I would finish it. I think the most compelling thing about season 1 was some of that eeriness or just slightly offness that kept me questioning the show, kept me off balance, kept me engaged. That's what kept me engaged. Season 2 lacked that quality. I don't know. I certainly couldn't blame it on casting. I thought the casting was like almost perfect for this. I love the grandpa, father, son trio. I think. I think in season 2, I think that works really well. I think it's interesting to unpack how one generation affects the next generation, affects the next generation. I think there's a lot of good questions they're asking.
Yep.
I think that might be something you could say that I like. I don't think
I would say that, but I would not say there's a lot of good questions. They ask a couple good questions where they could have been asking a lot of good questions. I also think there are questions that they thought they were asking well. Yeah, I'm going to get there for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what you mean, but I'm going to get there for sure. I think so. If I had to generally say something I liked about it, it was sort of the style of the show. I thought like the look of the show, obviously being in Hawaii and Sicily, like you're just constantly like, oh, these places are beautiful, very interesting. Like season 1, the youngest son, Connie Britton's son, like his whole thing with the locals and the rowing, and like I thought that was great.
Stop right there.
Yeah,
because I think that is actually a great point. There is one character who kind of has a little bit of a happy ending, or like something hopeful happened to him.
Yep.
I think generally we're dealing with people who have all this money but don't have they're not happy. I think it was interesting to see in season 1 the one character who kind of did have a great experience.
Was going to head in so most people were heading in a negative direction, and that wasn't going to stop after this vacation.
Yeah.
And for him, it was, okay, now I've made a decision that's going to lead me in a positive direction.
And I think season 2 lacked that also. I don't think there wasn't really a character in season 2 that had a similar arc.
And they had some opportunities for it, but they didn't capitalize on any of them. So, okay. Can you, once again, generally speaking, just for the sake of time, I guess, but can you generally put your finger on what you didn't like about the show?
I think it's really trying to tackle some tough questions. And I think it does not do a good job walking those questions out.
Yep.
Wrestling with them. I think
which is funny, because normally you would at this point then lean into like, well, it's a piece of art. You don't answer your own questions with a piece of art. And I just don't think, because they didn't ask the questions well, because they didn't answer the questions well, it was just like, is it really, does it look like a duck and it's not a duck? Does it look like a piece of art and it's not a piece of art? I sort of feel like that's the issue here. It's just it's not doing what it claims to be doing. And
to that person, I would then ask, have you seen Atlanta?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because this is the good version of White Lotus. Atlanta is the good version.
Sort of. And the fact that you don't even know why that would be a connection at all makes the point for you.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, sort of talking about the same thing. I also, I don't need a television show to tell me to be skeptical about humanity, which is, I think, what this show generally asks you to do. Everyone around you is, you should be skeptical of everybody around you. Everybody is entirely selfish, and that's fine. I'm going to talk in a second about how this show maybe wanted to ask some questions about things like race and gentrification, different things like that. And whether they did that well is a different issue. But what we saw on the screen was just a bunch of people being horrible to each other, and it was mostly white people being horrible to each other. And so the general view is that people are horrible to each other, and there's not really any redeeming quality about it. And so maybe the world's dark, but I don't need a TV show to continue to tell me how the world's dark. And so what's different about this? Well, let me just ask. So Succession does that as well. So what's the difference between Succession and this for you? That's a rough question to just toss at you right there. But
here's like the cherry on top for me with White Lotus, especially season 1. I think season 1 is the season that really deals with race and entitlement and wealth the most.
Yeah.
I think season 2 we're getting into like some other areas, like some sexuality stuff, and just a lot of different, like they're kind of fleshing that out a little bit. Season 1 is like really tackling white entitlement, white privilege.
Yeah.
And I think, so if I were to compare it to Succession, I think Succession doesn't have a character walking around in it saying, just in case you didn't know what this show's trying to say or ask, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to spell it out for you right here. And I think that was really the final nail in the coffin for me, was any subtlety, any art is blown up by a character walking around with her steno pad saying, did you see that? That's what we were trying to talk about here. And I'm of course talking about the character of Paula, Brittany O'Grady. She was telegraphing everything the show was trying to. Succession doesn't do that.
Sure.
Succession is much more artful about the discussion than the White Lotus.
Yeah. Oh,
agree?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. All right. That was the big, that was what really left a bad taste in my mouth. Was like, I'm not going to sit over here and act like I don't know some of, like, these things are true. And I'm not going to act like I don't feel like they should be, these are things that should be talked about.
Yeah.
But what do you want from me? You know, like what
yes.
What are you trying to get me to ask questions? Because so like, and I'll say this, you know, we talked about this in Atlanta, and I'll bring it up again. Atlanta had two different formulas in my mind. Maybe it was just me personally. I felt like there were two different formulas. One was ham-handed, and one just left like it was a little more shock value. And I know that's probably what they were trying to do. It's, you know, there's a place for that. But I got more out of Earn and Van going into that club and getting treated 100% differently than the white couple that walked up before them.
Yep.
That is something I know that that absolutely happens. And that hit me more, just like the real subtle, almost throwaway scene is something that hit me more than some of the bigger explosive episodes. So I really feel like there needs to be a subtlety, not like I don't, I'm literally in the same position I feel like I was in Atlanta. I know it's hard to hear someone like me saying these things, you know, and well, this is the way I like to eat my vegetables. So you need to serve me my vegetables this way. I'm really not trying to say that. I know that's probably how it's coming. I don't think you are saying. I also don't think that's the issue here. If you're going to claim, my questions are going to be a little out of order and stuff now, but we might as well go where the conversation goes naturally. Sure.
If you're going to claim this is okay, so let me rewind all the way to when I literally looked up, I was like, what do people like about the White Lotus? Okay. And these articles popped up. We got a New Yorker article. We have a New York Times article, and they're all basically like, well, White Lotus tackles white privilege. And I thought, and that's basically speaking mostly like you said about season 1. You're telling me that a show by a white creator with only white people, mostly white people in it, is the best commentary on white privilege? Like, how do you not see that? How do you not see you're not the ones to talk about this? Go watch Atlanta. It's completely ridiculous to me that rich white people make a show trying to take down rich white people. Like, that makes no sense to me. So I think that's probably just the difference. I just kind of called it self-loathing, but like it's sort of like a shame circle, I guess, where you're like, and you brought up the perfect question, but it's basically like, yeah, we sort of feel bad that we act like this, but let's talk about it for a while. And your perfect question is like, what am I supposed to do with this information? And just out of curiosity with White Lotus, like, okay, let me give you two options here. You put this show out there, and what do you think rich white people, you know, this fictional group of this fictional category of just like an amorphous group of rich white people, but whatever. So what do you think rich white people are going to take away from this show? You have two options. Number one, I'm rich and white and treat people poorly. Or number 2, man, Hawaii is pretty cool. I should go there to some resort. It looks beautiful there. Like, you just boosted Hawaii tourism. You just did the exact opposite of what you were trying to do allegedly. Now, we don't know what he was trying to do allegedly, but like what the commentary comes back and what the awards come around saying like, oh, you're really tackling white privilege. How did you tackle white privilege? Probably white privilege, white privilege needs to be tackled. You didn't do it with this show. I'm sorry. And that's probably what annoyed the crap out of me, was that I just didn't feel like anything was done with this show. Okay, we're potentially beating a dead horse at this point with that sort of thing. But can we have a small discussion about graphic sex on screen? Because White Lotus has, okay, and let me just be clear about this. When it happened in the show, I think I'm on the record many times that oftentimes graphic sex doesn't, well, graphic is a crazy word, but sex on screen doesn't bother me terribly. If it fits within the story, like I can get by, no problem. I can just kind of move on, especially if it supports the story. But I do not like shock value sex, which HBO does a lot, actually. And especially in this show, I was seriously thinking like, okay, there's a point somewhere around episode 4 or 5 in season 1 where something's going to pop on screen that makes you go, oh. And when that happens, however you feel about that, go ahead and go with your gut, because the rest of the show is not going to get any better from that point. So if you're like, yeah, I don't want to see that, then you just go ahead and shut it off and leave it off. That's one of my things. Like, you don't have to feel this way just because shows win awards. You don't need to feel this way. And that's one of my things. But I don't know. Do you want to have a discussion about sex on screen and when it can be supportive and when it isn't, or something like that? Or like, do we need this? And
yeah, I don't really want to talk about it, but since you brought it up, let's do it. I think the best thing I can say, and I know people are going to groan when I say this, because it's like it's been on at the front of a lot of conversation recently, or over the summer, since last summer. And I want to talk about the movie Top Gun that came out.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the things I've heard is we didn't need some of the relationship stuff that happens in it.
Mm.
And one of the things that I thought was so refreshing about the relationship stuff that happened in Top Gun was how there is a sex scene that they clearly are intimate, and you don't actually see anything. They show just enough, and then they kind of bring it back, and it ends up being a pretty good scene. I would argue that it's maybe the worst scene in the movie, because everything else is, really well done. But it ends up getting the message across without some of the unnecessary parts.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that answers your question at all. I think my main point would be there is a way to get the same message across without being real explicit.
Yeah. I generally agree with that. I think sometimes there's probably a level of intimacy that you can reach with. You don't need to go all the way to where some shows go, but I'm not like, hey, they go in the bedroom and close the door and that's it. Like, I think some detail is helpful at some points, but with some of the shocking elements of this show, I just kind of kept thinking like, yeah, I just don't need it. And I don't see the virtue in having it as a part of the show. Besides, like, because I don't come to this for, like, you got, I guess, for like, you have pornography and you have narrative, and I don't see the reason they should like shake hands somewhere. Like if you want to go choose to watch pornography, it's not a great idea probably, but go ahead. But don't mix the two where you force people to choose something they weren't choosing in the first place. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's actually my beef. So if you make that choice, that's fine. But like all of a sudden you see some graphic image, or like, who knows who could have been where your TV is in your house and who could have been in the room.
That's my thing.
Sure.
That takes a show like this out for me. And
yeah,
really,
well, I mean, now you wouldn't have been watching White Lotus around your kids anyway, so that's fine. But
I'm here to tell you, I usually stay away from shows like this now because At any moment, a kid could come walking in, one of my kids, so like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Gratuitous items, usually it close a door on a show for me. It's just like, probably not a great idea to, at any time really in my house to be tackling stuff like that. Yeah. So I think there's a way to accomplish everything you want to accomplish and keep it a little more tame.
Yeah, why not? And I think probably HBO sometimes just feels like they just go overboard for the sake of going overboard.
Uh-huh.
So, okay. So, are we able to kind of like say who would want to watch this show and who wouldn't want to watch this show? Or, can we talk about those sort of details and basically like, are we saying don't watch this show? Because I don't think I'm saying don't watch this show. I don't care. It doesn't obviously, but in fact, let me go here. Now that I've invested in 2 seasons of this show, if somehow a 3rd season came out, I'd probably watch it because there's enough about it that I'd be curious about. And there was enough about it that I liked, but generally speaking, I didn't like the show. And I don't think I'd recommend it to anybody like as a show to watch. So what do I do with that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm out.
Yeah, okay.
I am not in on season 3, and I'm definitely not recommending the show. So hopefully that doesn't like just take our legs off from under us. But
no, whatever. That's what we're here to do, I think.
Yeah, I don't think this is a show that I could in good faith recommend because there's not something that I can say that it doesn't have a thing that I really feel like I can hang my hat on here.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I put in our notes, basically like I'm not going to put my reputation on the line for White Lotus, but I would absolutely for Fleabag, which has some graphic elements. It's got pretty, it's got pretty intense language. It's got some sexual content. So like, but I'm still like, you got to get over that stuff. So, and watch Fleabag because it's that good. And I see your point here, which is basically like, there's nothing about White Lotus that makes me want to put myself on the line for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I pretty much agree with that. But if you like drama, I guess, if you like a skeptical take on humanity, like if that's what you like, then I think maybe you like White Lotus. Some people I think like cringe stuff, and yeah. I get what you mean by cringe now. Like a lot of people said cringe. Some people like cringe. I don't. That's kind of foreign to me. I don't get liking that. Mm-hmm. And I especially, one thing I really did not like was in season 2. There's a lot of like just very skeptical attitudes in a specific relationship, and they start mistrusting each other over the course of the show. I didn't like. I just don't want to give too much away, but I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they start distrusting each other, and then the whole time you just feel dirty about their distrust, and it's just a very, very sad situation. And then like I'm like coming back to talk to my wife and just thinking like feeling like I did something wrong just because I was involved in their crazy relationship. And then also I didn't even like how potentially they fixed that, sort of like according to the show, but I don't like how they fixed it either. So I don't think it was a healthy fix. And so it's just like, I just don't know what they're tackling with this show exactly.
There was one thing I thought was interesting from that scenario.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to know that what? I don't know that I want to spoil it.
Sure.
So I probably won't.
You don't.
But I think it asked a singular question well, because I caught myself going, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." And that would be the only thing I would say about that. I think it did maybe ask one question well, but overall I agree. It really just makes you feel a little disgusting.
Yeah.
Watching it. And just the seeds of doubt sown. Yeah. Not healthy, not something I want to spend much time thinking about.
And I don't think people are like this. So, like some people are like this potentially, and other people are not like this. So when everybody in the show is like this, sort of, it ends up messing with your worldview, which kind of sucks. So
I'm going to walk this out real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
But if you don't want the show spoiled, skip ahead 2 minutes maybe. But
okay, yeah.
There is a similar situation that happens to there's a married couple, and there's a similar situation that happens to both of them separately.
Mm-hmm.
You see it play out with the guy, and you don't see it play out with the girl.
Yep.
So, and then they come back together and they tell each other nothing happened. You know for a fact that nothing happened with the guy because you actually saw that scene. You don't know for sure with the girl.
Yep.
And their whole thing. So the guy says, but I told you nothing happened. And then the girl says, well, I told you nothing happened.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, you're sitting there, but we don't know nothing happened. In fact, we're pretty sure something did happen because she's the girl, and we're unsure here. And I think it does ask a good question about honesty and how there is a tendency to believe guys over girls.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that part was interesting, and I thought it stopped me in my tracks. You're right. They did the exact same thing, and they both told each other that nothing happened. Yep. Why are we believing the guy and not the girl?
Yeah, I do think
that is the one thing I thought that was good about that. So hopefully that was less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think it was. And you also kind of
kept it vague.
Didn't necessarily give enough information away. So, I mean, I don't know how to wrap it up except to just say basically like this show has a lot of either way for us, I think. And like Brandon said, it's a no for him from now on. I probably would maybe stick with it, but depending on where they lead, I just think they didn't do what they meant to do, and you can just stir up a bunch of stuff and say you were like having an interesting conversation, except you didn't invest in the conversation whatsoever. You just stirred up a bunch of stuff and made us talk about it, which is fine. Sometimes it's fine, but I just didn't feel right to me. So, enjoy the White Lotus if you watch it, I guess. I don't know.
Or not.
All right, Brandon, what have you been watching lately?
So much.
Nice. I actually watched some stuff too.
I'm watching something you should be watching.
Okay. Well, you want to hit me with that first?
Yeah, The Chosen season 3.
Okay.
Yeah. The Lord is watching. Anthony.
I like to not react at all.
I know.
It makes you upset.
It doesn't make me upset.
Yeah, you get mad.
I actually think
you can't read me.
I can read you like a book. I actually think that this might be something that you wouldn't care for. We talked about doing an episode a little bit. We kind of him-hauled around.
You're making up my mind for me. If I just sit here long enough, you'll not make me watch it.
I am totally fine kind of keeping this. It's also something, like I've said before, I wouldn't want to put it on the chopping block with you because I really like it. I really enjoy it. So, and it's our Lord. So, I also have been watching Madoff, a
what's this on?
Docuseries on Netflix.
Oh.
If you are interested in the financial world at all,
sure.
I know you don't usually lean into that stuff, but
I do.
This is the Mac Daddy of all financial crime, mystery. Just, it's insane. Insanity. The level to which Bernie Madoff deceived it's crazy.
No, totally. I'd be very interested in that.
This was a good one. Good one. Just called Madoff on Netflix. Still watching Shrinking. Still great.
Still great.
I'm
current. Yeah.
Mayor of Kingstown. Still cruising along on that. Jury's out. Last of Us. Better than ever.
Oh man. Episode 3 got insane. Like, it's just like,
wait, what are you talking about?
Of The Last of Us.
Are you watching that?
No, but episode 3 is everyone is talking about episode 3.
It was so good.
I'm not watching it yet. I'm going to watch it just because I need to.
I didn't know everyone was talking about it. That's exciting.
Yeah, man. Like, they're losing their minds for like Nick Offerman. And
he was so good.
Yeah. They're losing their minds about it.
So good.
Okay. Well, you've done. Sorry.
Oh yeah. That's it. That's
All
it
right.
for me.
Okay. So I watched Reacher. I was actually, because we got an episode coming up about it, so I just finished that. I was pleased to find out that I wasn't as behind as I thought I was. I thought I was buying into 2 seasons, but there's only one season out.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm pleasantly surprised when I didn't have a bunch more to watch.
That's like doubles the daunting level if there's just one season, you know.
But it's coming back
soon,
sometime. Yeah. And then, I shrinking, agree with what you said. I checked out. Okay. So a couple things I checked out. I watched, there's a show from roughly 2013 that lasted about 3 years called Moon Boy. And what's the name of the guy from Molly's Game who always starts in the show? He always starts his phrases with like a bad poem.
I don't. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you that.
Chris O'Dowd? Is it Chris O'Dowd?
Oh, because he does a lot of voice acting. It is Chris O'Dowd. Yes.
Okay. He's in Moon Boy.
He's Scottish or Irish, right?
Yes.
Yep.
He's in Moon Boy, and Moon Boy is essentially, it's very, very similar. My friend Todd, who listens to the show and doesn't like some of our takes sometimes, and he likes to tell me about it. But anyway, he told me about it because of I love it too. He told me about it because of Dairy Girls. It is very, very similar to Dairy Girls, but it's a young boy as opposed to young women. So, and he has an imaginary friend. The imaginary friend is Chris O'Dowd. I've only watched 2 episodes. The first episode I did not love. I liked the second episode a little bit better, but it's so similar to Dairy Girls. So if you like Dairy Girls, maybe check it out. But I think Dairy Girls is, at least at this point, I'm not far enough in to know, Dairy Girls is probably better. And then I stumbled upon, somehow, I don't even know how I did this. I stumbled upon a show called Make or Break on Apple TV Plus. And it's essentially, I think we love these. It's essentially All or Nothing or Hard Knocks or Drive to Survive, but for professional surfers.
Oh.
It's awesome.
Kelly
Love
Slater's in it?
Not yet.
He's billed.
Oh, he's probably he is in a little bit of it. Yeah. He's not like the main. It's like sort of like he is in some of it, but he's not one of the main focuses of it. It's sort of like how Lewis Hamilton was not a main focus of Drive to Survive early on.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Kelly Slater's like the most famous. So I think he's just not, but there's a lot of focus on the younger guys coming up, but it's just like, it's this, well, number one, it's beautiful because they only go to awesome places. And number 2, it's just like, oh, cool. I like digging into another sport in this way. Like every time one of these things comes out that I can learn more about a sport that I, don't know much about, I love it. So I'm almost done with season 1. Love it. Season 2 is about to come out. So I'm pretty pumped about that. It's called Make or Break on Apple TV Plus. Lots of cool surfing stuff. And it made me think I think I mentioned this, but I want to make sure I do in case I didn't. At some point I mentioned that I watched The 100-Foot Wave. Did I ever mention that to you?
No.
It's a series on HBO called The 100-Foot Wave. And it's this guy's pursuit of surfing, being the first to surf a 100-foot wave. And it's in Portugal, I think is where they go. It's better than Make or Break for sure. It's awesome. It's completely awesome. And then Make or Break is really, really good. So that was a really cool thing I checked
Stuff like this has to be the single greatest like proselytizing tool for sports.
Well, that's the thing, man. Yeah, totally. And also, so actually this is interesting to talk about for us. Recently, so I mean, it's a couple weeks ago, once this episode actually comes out, but something that happened, obviously we're going to turn to soccer now because that's the only thing I care about at this point. But, so recently Wrexham played in the FA Cup, but they put that match on ESPN. So it was for like my current time, last Sunday, you could watch Wrexham play on ESPN, which is crazy. It's insane, basically. Like we've said a couple times, a beer league softball team was shown on ESPN, their game. They ended up tying, but it brought into a question. This whole debate then started because I'm obviously a fan of the Columbus Crew and MLS. This debate started then about why has American sports media not gotten behind American soccer? And really interestingly, they go and take this 5th tier Welsh football team and put them on ESPN because of Rob and Ryan, obviously, but they put them on there. Why didn't they throw their support behind? And now there's this whole new conversation about how Apple TV Plus is doing MLS this year. I think I've mentioned that on the podcast before, but every MLS game is on Apple TV Plus, no blackouts. I like that we're kind of moving that direction. But there's this whole conversation about how the narrative is what people latch onto, and the narrative is probably what would grow the sport of soccer in the United States. Because that, like, basically, just look what happened with Wrexham. Wrexham was the most, it was like, I forget the number, but it was the most watched soccer match that day. In the United States, and which is not, that was sort of what Rob and Ryan tweeted out, which was a little propagandizing because there wasn't any other good soccer match that day. But anyway, it was a bunch of people watched a 5th tier soccer game, like I don't know for sure, but a lot. Probably not more than Premier League, but maybe at like Premier League levels of watching. So like, that's pretty craziness because people connected with the narrative in Welcome to Wrexham. So now they care about Wrexham and they are starting to potentially care about soccer, which I think is cool. But a whole conversation then has happened recently about how, like, Apple TV Plus needs to go into these MLS teams and do some of these series with, like, for example, the Columbus Crew, like they almost moved. We almost got our team taken away from us, and the supporters in Columbus are who banded together and saved the Crew. And they kept the team in Columbus. Wow. So, like, that's a heck of a story. Yeah, we should be telling that narrative, and that would make people certainly like them a lot more.
For sure, absolutely. I think you can lay a lot of blame at sports like football and baseball.
Yeah,
I think they have the chokehold on. Yeah. National broadcasting and what have you. But
for sure, I think, and it's interesting to think about, I think baseball sort of has some narrative built into it. I feel like maybe baseball fans really dig into their teams and football fans don't quite as much, like every element of their teams.
Really?
I don't know. I don't like football as much. Yeah,
I agree. I don't like football as much, but I feel like football fans are nuts
about the football. But do they know as much about the players, each player? And I know so much about every Cleveland Guardians player.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question to ask.
I've seen Jose Ramirez's house, like pictures of his house on, just stuff like that.
I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah. Football fans are nuts, man.
Yes, they are. That does it for this episode of Good Show. Good Show is created, recorded, edited, and produced by Anthony Mako and Brandon Sharp. Our theme music was written and recorded by me, Anthony, and all our graphics and socials are developed by Brandon. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please make sure to like or follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you appreciate our show, please throw us a rating and a review there too. If you'd like to discuss any of our content, you can search the Good Show Facebook group or follow us on Instagram at The Good Show Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.